Now, the SA Human Rights Commission report into the July 2021 unrest has revealed that those involved in vandalism and destruction were well resourced. The Commission, however, still does not know the identity of the perpetrators. More than 350 people were killed during the unrest that caused an estimated 50 billion rand in damages. Joining us is Dr. Bhasela Yalezo, who's a senior lecturer at the UKZN Business School. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. This report has really concluded that the acts of vandalism and destruction were orchestrated by actors who are well resourced, but their identity remains mysterious. What do you make of this?
I think that conclusion is certainly welcome from the side of the Commission, because the other investigation is the purview of the police service or people with expertise in terms of investigating criminal elements of any sort of crime or unrest. So I just think the report is quite intense and very delicately done, and actually points out to a number of ills from the side of government. And I think this actually states pellucidly that government dismally failed. And I think I'm just taken aback by 3.6 of what from the comments or from the summary of the Commission. They say the president actually should have done better, and the state agencies should have done better. I think if we were a very active democracy, the president by now should have resigned. Certainly the commissioner of police and everyone involved in the security cluster should have resigned by now if we were taking our democracy seriously. I just think the clusters failed us dismally in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we look, I mean, just a short while ago before we spoke to you, there were comments around the inequality around, the black communities living close to Phoenix. And we heard quite a lot about that also coming out of the report. What's your assessment of the day-to-day lives of those living near Phoenix, the black communities specifically?
I certainly agree with the arguments or the comments made, in the sense that Phoenix is somehow known to be an area for people who are experiencing high levels of poverty. So I certainly agree with that point, and that is the lived reality. Or people who know KZN, and particularly in Durban, they know Phoenix is not an affluent society or community. So social ills, poverty is extremely evident in such areas. But maybe to extend this thing slightly further, if one looks at the NDP, it talks certainly on this issue that the vision of government is to reduce poverty, increase employment, and also make it a point that there's inclusive society. So if one looks at all the elements of what the NDP seeks to achieve, none of them have been achieved, and none of them will be achieved by 2030. So this points to a multiplicity of failures by government. One, on issues of state security, on reducing crime, on issues of the economy, on issues of poverty alleviation or reduction, reducing inequality, making the point that the economy is functioning, an accountable state, an effective state. None of those things have been achieved. And had we taken steps as a country, or particularly the ruling party, in achieving what or half of what they wanted to achieve in the NDP, I don't think we would have found ourselves in such a predicament of the July unrest.
As we take stock and perhaps look even deeper to the two drivers that were spoken to, I mean the primary and secondary drivers to this unrest, what stands out for you as you analyze what transpired and who the driving forces were? I
think the primary sources or orchestrators of this July unrest, indeed, they were well resourced, and they are very astute, and their approach was effective because they were able to organize whatever material they needed. They were able to canvass this whole thing via social media, and they did one could say they were successful in what they wanted to do, although in some areas they were not, because the community was quite alert. But had certain communities been not able to protect their own assets and their own malls, I think we would have seen a lot of destruction, because government was sleeping at that particular point in time. I think the other aspect of the secondary perpetrators, of course, they took the opportunity, or they were opportunistic in their behavior, because the groundwork was done already. So for them, it was just easy to go and follow the wind. If they were going to this mall to do looting, they will just go and take the stuff, because the groundwork would have been done by the very primary perpetrators of this thing. So I just think government was left napping, because this thing happened or was planned before it actually occurred, and government was nowhere to be found. And even when they saw that something was happening, nothing was done by the ministers concerned, and I think the president himself was very slow to make any sort of reaction, and actually would have avoided not only the looting but also the loss of lives that we experienced. I mean, having 350-something people dying is quite catastrophic for a country of our nature, and it actually exacerbated the violence that we saw in Phoenix and other areas, and perpetrated the racial tensions between the black people and the Indian people.
Yeah. Another part of this was the lack of police intelligence, which has come very strongly before this unrest, which remains in the spotlight as questions are being asked about, the foreplanning of the intelligence and how things could have been preempted. Of course, we did hear that there were hints, of course, as the intelligence was trying to get a sense and understanding of what could arise from the July unrest, but it wasn't enough.
I think the question then is, if the minister concerned and the security cluster was not sleeping, what is it that they did, or what is it that they did to prevent such a situation occurring? And actually, they were still fighting their petty issues, and they're still ministers. I mean, Police Minister Bhasela is still the minister, and there's no accountability. And the President Ramaphosa is still the president, and nothing has really happened to any of the people who failed to act accordingly using the state resources. So I just think it goes back to the issue of accountability, and to the issue of not taking our democracy seriously. But also, as citizens, we continue to be loyal and not be vocal, particularly about the ministers that we have, or we're not doing enough to deal decisively with the ministers who failed, or who fail us as citizens of the country. And I just cannot understand to this day that we still have Police Minister Bhasela, who has dismally failed in that ministry, and other ministers in the security cluster, as well as the president, because they dismally failed. And I hope we never experience another unrest in South Africa due to the lapse of accountability. I hope now the president will be able to act on this report as a matter of urgency. But President Ramaphosa is not someone who's well known for being efficient when we receive such reports, because the state capture, we've not really seen any positive strides or significant positive strides that have been done in that regard. Sidimo Famadi did mention that the intelligence in South Africa is actually sleeping, and made good, valuable recommendations, and nothing has been done so far, which is significant. And hopefully this report will force the president to act this time.
Very well. Thank you so much for weighing in on this discussion, Dr. Bhasela Yalezo, Senior Lecturer at the UKZN Business School.